I never would have imagined that my senior year of high school would bring me an insight into what literature makes you feel and discover. Many individuals go about their lives disliking reading complex literature, but I was not one of them as a young preteen. My perception of reading changed, however, as I transitioned into high school because I saw reading more as an obligation rather than a desired task. That's why I almost always dreaded my English classes. The minutes would go by so slowly as I flipped pages of an old book I was not interested in. I felt as if every word we read had no meaning to me and would serve me no purpose. I waited for the bell to ring, ready to rush to a more challenging class. This was the year when everyone was hyped up over the Cubs' triumph at the World Series for the first time since 1908, and then there were all the reactions when Trump had won the presidential election. For all of these reasons, at this point in my life, I was more than ready to get out and start college. Meanwhile, assignments continued to stress me out. The last thing I wanted to focus on was English and writing pointless essays with restricted outlines I did not comprehend. So, when Miss Ferraro, our senior year English teacher, started to constantly remind us to buy the book A Thousand Splendid Suns because we would start on it right after winter break, I was not interested whatsoever. I expected it to be a regular old reading with a typical bad ending involving boring characters. As I began reading it the first day after she introduced it to us and showed us background context on a PowerPoint, I was shocked that I was enjoying the task of reading again. Reading started to channel me out until I felt relaxed and plugged out of the world for a moment. I started reading the book every time I had a chance to, and even preferred reading over texting most of the time. It began to become not only a habit for me, but almost an obsession. From the beginning to the end, this page-turner of literature opened my eyes to conflicts in the world that had been unknown to me and that were very different than what I had been accustomed to. Then, my teacher said that we had to annotate for points, and this discouraged me because annotating wasn't my forte at the time. I felt like it slowed me down and I could not get to the exhilarating parts. I actually believed it was a waste of time, but later realized that it was otherwise, because as I annotated, the more I began to remember the events in the book. During quizzes and discussions, I saw that my good and thorough annotations equaled better and higher quiz results, which is logical. I began to ace all of them because this particular novel intrigued me. It made me open up to a wide variety of books again because it made me realize how much a human would do for someone that was not blood related. To give you the portrayers, this book focuses on the story of a young girl named Mariam who first lives in Herat, Afghanistan. At the time, Afghanistan was going through some tough times because of war and gender discrimination. But a girl named Layla went against the odds. She later plays an important role in Mariam's life. But initially, Mariam is living through some struggles on her own because she is a woman. For example, she wasn't allowed to have a good education, much less a good job to maintain herself. She decides that since her mother and father are separated, she will go live with her father instead for a better well-being because he is a wealthy cinema owner. Her mother threatens to kill herself if she leaves, but Mariam doubts it and leaves. Her mother then kills herself by hanging herself from a tree, and this traumatizes Mariam, making her believe it was her fault. Her father takes her in after this, but his wife decides to send her off and force her to marry a shoe shop owner named Rashid. At first, he treats Mariam like a princess, buying her gifts and treating her right. And when he finds out she is pregnant, he becomes even kinder. Then Mariam loses the baby. She miscarriages about 7 more times, and Rashid begins to verbally and physically abuse her. I can only imagine the pain she felt and the loneliness that lingered with her for decades to come. Layla grows up into a young teenager and falls in love with her childhood friend, Tariq. Layla is determined to go to school and continue on her education to be someone in the world someday, and that her smarts will take her far. Throughout the novel, Layla continues to remind me of myself because of her hardworking attitude and aspirations. Later on, as both of them grow up, Tariq's family forces Tariq to leave Afghanistan because of the terrible bombings that have began to occur too often. Unfortunately, Rashid forces Layla to also marry him even though she is an adolescent, crushing her dreams of continuing her education. Rashid then forces her to have a child. I can imagine myself at this age having to deal with such emotional and physical pain. This made me understand her situation more and appreciate how great life is in America. Eventually, Rashid physically assaults both wives to the point of almost death. Mariam reacts finally in such an extreme way that she ends up killing Rashid with a shovel to the head to stop him from killing them and possibly Layla's child. As a result, Mariam gets executed by Afghanistan officials because of what she has done. Layla then lives her life with both her children and Tariq very joyfully. Clearly, this story has many other important events occurring and special relationships with characters that kept me reading through countless amounts of pages. Even though this was an extremely long book, while reading, I enjoyed it to the fullest, and I am glad Miss Ferraro introduced it into my life. I engaged with the book, and I realized a very big turning point in respect to literature. I completely recommend this book, not only because it changed my experience with reading, but also because it can change the way we perceive our world. Reading like this challenged me to be thankful for what our country offers and encourage us to look out for others who do not have the same privileges. Miriam and Layla's struggles also made me appreciate the education I was given as a woman and encourages me to strive for the better results every day.